I've already seen a lot of people talk about this, but I'll go ahead and explain this as well. Jaws of Defeat has it so that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, a player loses life equal to the difference between the power and the toughness of that creature. So if Grizzly Bears enters the field, the difference between its power and toughness is 0, so they would lose 0 life. If Wall of Air enters the battlefield, the difference between its power and toughness is 4, so the opponent would lose 4 life. But let's say in response to the trigger when Grizzly Bears enters the battlefield, we cast Overkill on it, which gives it -0, -9,999. Does this cause my opponent to lose 9,999 life? A lot of the time, the game doesn't like to deal with negative values. You can't ever choose a negative number, deal negative damage, or gain negative life. But it is possible for a game value such as a creature's power to be less than 0. If a calculation or a comparison ever needs to use a negative value, it can. But if the results of that calculation yields a negative number, it uses 0 instead. Unless that effect doubles or sets a specific number to a player's life total or the power and toughness of a creature. But really, the only part of that rule that's relevant is that a creature's power and toughness can be less than 0. Because when dealing with the difference between two numbers, we always have a positive value. The gap between 2 power and -9,997 is 9,999. But hold on, Jaws of Defeat triggers when the creature enters the battlefield. And the values of the power and toughness of the creature was 2 and 2. So even if I overkill that creature, shouldn't the values that I go with be the values of that creature when it entered the battlefield? Well, once a triggered ability has triggered and gone on the stack, it acts independently from the source. But sometimes when we're trying to resolve a triggered ability, we'll try to recall some of the information from some of its sources. And if we require that information, we just go with the information of that source in the public zone that it's expected to be. But if it's no longer in the zone that it was expected to be, then we go with the last known information of that card as it last existed, which in this case, the last known information would have been the creature as it last existed on the battlefield. While resolving Overkill, Grizzly Bears will be on the battlefield with 2 power and -9,997 toughness. But then remember, just because a creature has 0 toughness doesn't mean that it's immediately moved into the graveyard. It's not moved into the graveyard until state-based actions are checked, which is after Overkill has resolved. Which means that Jaws of Defeat last remembers that Grizzly Bears with 2 power and -9,997 toughness, which will see those two values, and the disparity between those two numbers is 9,999, and that's how much your opponent will lose.